Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mang. Welcome back to Solo Role Manging, my sort of ongoing series, somewhat, of solo role playing. Now, I have an ongoing thing, an ongoing kind of campaign, uh, in a setting of my own design that is currently using a RPG system of my own kind of design. But you know, there's a lot of role playing systems, RPG systems out there, and there's a lot of different ways you can do solo role playing. A lot of the different things you can do with it, a lot of different methods, and all that sort of stuff. So I wanted to try out doing something just a little bit different as a standalone thing, just to give it a try. Recorded, not streamed. And with this, I want to test out a few things. The first thing that I want to test out, primarily, I mean, obviously the main thing that we're testing here, is a different RPG system called 13th Age. 13th Age is getting somewhat on in years at this point. From 2013, so it's about 11 years old now. And this came out like a year before 5th edition D&D, and this was really kind of meant to be this was sort of meant to be a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, just not from Wizards of the Coast, from Pelgrane Press. So they have Rob Heinzu, who is the lead designer on 4th edition D&D, and then Jonathan Tweet, who was like the lead designer on 3.5 edition, coming together to make a new fantasy D20 game. So it definitely takes a bunch of ideas from 4th edition D&D and takes ideas from 3.5 edition D&D, but it also does its kind of own thing as well. It's a game that I probably should have looked into a lot more back in 2013, 2014, because I probably would have really loved it. Back then, I was playing 4th edition D&D, and my group liked 4th edition D&D, but we started to move away from it just because combat took so long and it was just so kind of board gamey and slow. I still think it does a lot of great things, but I don't have much interest in going back to it just because how slow combat can take and how kind of gamey it is overall. But then 5th edition D&D came out and we really had no interest in it because we had found other better games like Dungeon World and Shadow the Demon Lord, things like that. And we really took to Shadow the Demon Lord, which for us was kind of D&D but better. So, anyways, 13th Age. I have not read this whole book. Let me just get that right out of the way. It's many pages. I have not read the whole thing. It's over 300 pages. But I understand the basic rules. I understand character creation, classes, things like that. All the basics for combat, so on and so forth. I think I understand enough for us to go into this. And 13th Age is not grid-based. It's a bit looser than that. Sort of, I think it goes more into zone-based, I think would probably be how we're going to run it. But it's fairly loose. You probably do want some sort of miniatures on a mat, just for like general sort of position, rather than specific position. It kind of is important to know if you're nearby other things, if you're engaged with certain things, and you could do all that entirely theater of the mind, but it is a lot easier just to have something in front of you to look at. Whereas something like 4th edition D&D is very, very grid-based, like through and through. And I tend to use grids nowadays. And yeah, for me, it was either always like, it's all grid-based, like 4th edition D&D, or it's all Theater of the Mind, and you don't really sketch out or put down anything. It's all just in your head. But somewhere in between is probably not that bad of an idea with like zone-based and just sort of general kind of relativistic positioning. So anyways, we'll get more into 13th Age in a second. The other thing that I want to test out is this. So this is Foundry. Foundry Virtual Tabletop. You know, the only virtual tabletop I ever used before this was Roll20. And years back when I was still kind of into online RPGs, maybe I looked at Foundry or something similar to it and was like, okay, it seems fine. But now, I mean, this is pretty advanced, all things considered. And there is, you know, sort of a game system for 13th Age built into it now that you can just fire up. And it includes, you know, the races, the classes. It includes, like, pre-gen characters. It includes pretty much all the monsters available in the SRD. So it's pretty easy to just kind of throw together. And not really that complicated for me to just add in new monsters or any new little things that I need to add. Foundry is difficult for me to add in a whole new system. And that's why I won't be using Foundry at all with Shadows of Adventure, which is my system. And that's kind of why I want to look at other systems, because maybe I want to do a campaign with a different system in Foundry. If this works out and it's a lot of fun and works well and blah blah blah, it might be a way to go. So we'll see. I do have okay. So what we're going to be running is Tomb of the Serpent Kings, which is an often recommended, like, initial dungeon crawl. Like, if you are sitting down, and you've never DM'd before, you have players that have never played before, and you want to get into tabletop role-playing games, Tomb of the Serpent Kings is pretty good. And it's designed to be like your first adventure, your first module. Now, it is, and they say that it is better if the GM is not completely new. And I would say that if you are completely fresh, and you have a group that is completely fresh, you could maybe go better with, like, Lost Mines of Phandelver or whatever. One of the D&D sort of starting kits for 5th edition or something like that. But I hesitate to steer anybody towards 5th edition D&D. So yeah, it's really good, and it's really meant to be like a teaching kind of module for players. So in here, I don't want to show too much of anything, but there's all these like little blocks of text that are listed as lessons. And it says every room trapper encounter is designed to teach new players and GMs a useful lesson. Some are general, while others are specific to this dungeon. Attentive players should begin to understand the structure, nature, and dangers of the tomb so they can begin to predict and exploit it for their own gain. These lessons might seem trite for experienced GMs, but I think it's useful to list them anyways. So yeah, it's really meant to be like a teaching starter dungeon crawl, while still being just a good dungeon crawl. If dungeon crawls aren't your bag, though, obviously there's not much of interest here, because the whole thing does take place in a dungeon. So it's kind of old school in that way. But to each their own, you know. Dungeons are kind of a core aspect of Dungeons and Dragons, which is a lot, you know, what kind of people expect. So, I have ran Tomb of the Serpent Kings before, for some family members a number of years ago. I don't really remember much about it. I think we ran it with Maze Rats, which is a very light, simple system. But really, I think you could adapt this to any OSR game, any fantasy D20 game, any, any sort of fantasy adjacent system. It's very, rules light and system agnostic. So, we are adapting this to 13th Age, and I have not looked through this at all to like go through and say, okay, this would be this rule in 13th Age. We're gonna just be doing that as we go. The only thing I have done is down at the section where it lists the monsters that are found in the dungeon. I have pre-prepared those. Well, most of them. Some of these big ones, I guess I haven't done yet. We'll see if we get to any of the big ones. We'll see how far we get in general. Okay? The third thing that I'd like to maybe test out, and we'll see, is this Mythic GM emulator. So I purchased this. This is like the most recommended thing often for solo games. A lot of people recommend it, I should say. And I haven't really read through it much before going into this. I don't know how much we're going to use this yet compared to just my other solo campaign. But it has a lot of rules, a lot of things, a lot of examples, a lot of charts and things like that. The basic thing is, the age-old sort of fate question. And you roll on this fate chart. So, if you've been watching my other solo campaign, you'll know we've been doing this kind of, fate rolls, basically, these checks to determine yes or no questions about certain things. So, that's this just expanded out greatly. So, now, before you ask any question, after you ask a question, you have to determine the likelihood of that question being yes versus no. So the baseline is, of course, 50-50. And then when you roll, you're rolling a D100. And you have to roll, I think, equal or under. It's definitely under. Well, regardless, I mean, that's a fringe case. So you roll equal or under, we'll say. I guess that would make sense for 50-50 then. And if it's equal or under the number in the middle here, then the answer is yes. So if you ask, is there a furnace in this room? You're 50-50, you roll and you get a 37, the answer is yes. If you get an 86, the answer is no. Then the other two numbers here are the numbers for exceptional yes and exceptional no. So it's sort of like a critical success or a critical yes or a critical no. So if you roll 10 or under on that, then it's very much yes. There's a massive furnace or something, who knows what. Or if you roll critical no, then not only is there not in a furnace, but there's a rat gnawing on your face. I don't know. Whatever. Something, exceptional in relation to that. So then, it goes from there to, if the answer of yes is more likely, very likely, nearly certain, or certain. And you can see that even if the answer is certain, you're only got a 90%. There's still a 10% chance the answer could be no, even if you say that it's certain. And that's also true for impossible on the other end. So even if something is impossible, there's still a chance. So then, all the other numbers here are related to the chaos factor. So this is just kind of... It's a number between 1 and 9 tracked throughout the whole adventure, and it's influenced by how in control the character or characters are. of the situation during the adventure. You know, if they're doing really well, they're doing everything, you know, as they kind of plan to, nothing is out of their control, everything's, you know, everything's cool here, then the chaos factor will go up. No. Yes, no. The chaos factor will go down. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. The chaos factor will go down. That makes more sense, yes. The chaos factor will go down, and that changes the numbers for different rolls, and that makes it so that a yes answer to your questions is far less likely. So no becomes far more common. You can see if chaos factor drops down by 1 point, you already lose 15% chance of getting a yes answer on a 50-50. And that means that, I mean, I don't know exactly how that plays out. Because some of it kind of depends on the question you ask and like sort of how you ask it. I think the whole system is predicated on the idea that a yes answer is more active. It's something that is more, that is going to change the scene a bit more than a no answer. You know, are there zombies outside the building? A yes answer is definitely much more active of an answer than a no there. So I think that's how you generally want to phrase your questions, with yes being like more involved. So I guess the chaos factor going down means that the situations are going to get less and less active, which to me seems like then the chaos factor will just continue to go down because nothing insane is occurring. Everything is just going to come up no a lot of the time. But yeah, I don't know. So then the opposite, you know, if the adventure is getting really out of control, really chaotic, chaos factor goes up, yes answers become much more common, so on and so forth. And obviously there's just countless examples trying to help you understand how this all works and how you should use it and so on and so forth. And then there's random events. So when rolling the D100, if you get a double number, such as 11 or 33, and the single value of that number, 1, 2, or 3, or whatever, is equal to or less than the current chaos factor, you trigger a random event. And there's a whole section then on random events. So then as the chaos factor goes down, the chance of you getting random events goes down as well. Whereas chaos factor goes up, you get more random events. And you know, there's all this random event focus table. So this is certainly more for my other campaign, where we're kind of just doing freeform sandbox stuff and we're asking all these questions. But somebody did recommend for doing like pre-written dungeon crawls and stuff like that, what you could do to make it a little less predictable and remove a little bit of the fact that like you as the DM can read all the information and blah blah blah, is that every time you go into like a new room or a new section, you go to like the Mythic GM emulator and you ask like, you know, is the room different? Is there something different with this room than as written? You know, and then if the answer is yes, then you, okay, are the monsters different, or are there more you know, different things like that you kind of keep asking to see what's different about the room each time you go in. So we can give that a try, but we'll just kind of see, because I'm juggling a lot of things here, so we may not even get to that, and we may just, because I primarily want to test out 13th Age. That's the main thing, and then the second thing is testing out Foundry. So this is the distant third thing if we get to it. Okay, so as part of running Tombs of the Serpent King, I wanted to have like the most kind of classic traditional group, you know, of adventurers here. So we've got a four-piece McNugget. We have a fighter, a cleric, a wizard, and a rogue. Very, very traditional. So 3 of these were pre-gens. One I actually had to make. I had to make the cleric. So this is the winner fighter. I don't know why they called him that. He is a half-elf fighter. And 13th Age, again, it's similar to D&D in a lot of ways. So if you've played Dungeons and Dragons, especially, you know, like 3.5 edition, 4th edition, there's going to be a lot here that's pretty familiar. And there's going to be a bunch of mechanics that we are not going into too much. Things like the icon relationships and stuff like that, we're not going to be touching upon. So there's, you know, strength, dex, con, int, whiz, charisma. There's that stuff. And then there's armor class, obviously. But then there's also physical defense and mental defense. So those replace the sort of traditional reflex, fortitude, will stuff. So physical defense is essentially reflex and fortitude wrapped into one. And then mental defense is will. Pretty much. Then there's recoveries. So this is similar to 4th edition. Every character has a certain number of recoveries that they can spend each day. Although 13th Age does not call it a day. They call it like between full heal-ups. So at a certain point, the GM will say that you, the characters qualify for a full heal up. They have done enough that they can then rest for a full heal up, and that could just be 8 hours overnight and blah blah blah, or that could be spending 3 days in town just chilling, or you know, who knows what. And then in between each battle, you can also do a quick rest, which pretty much just lets you use one of your recoveries and lets you potentially recharge some of your sort of powers that can be recharged on a quick rest. But it's not a full heal up. Full heal up, obviously, everything kind of resets back to good and full. And I guess the distinction would be, I don't know, because normally if I was DMing, I would say, okay, you know, anytime you spend the night overnight, you get the full heal up. But I could see an argument for if you are doing like an extended stay in a dangerous environment, then perhaps, you know, you don't get the full heal up. But it seems kind of punishing. I don't know. It's hard to say because you have certain powers that are daily powers, and they're still called daily, even though, you know, you might not be able to use them the next day, depending. So they're still called daily because that's how it was in 4th edition. You don't get those back until you do the full heal up. So if you go like days without recharging your daily powers, I mean, you're going to get pretty weak. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. I have to read more on like their philosophy. I mean, let's just go to what they say about the full heal up. We're probably not going to get to this in this little run through, but as heroes, they prevail when they press on, not when they retreat and lick their wounds. Once the characters have fought about 4 battles, they earn a full heal up. Lots of times, the characters take their heal up by resting or by celebrating back in town. The characters have earned the heal up and should enjoy it. Sometimes, however, the heal up occurs in the middle of an adventure rather than at the end. Sometimes a paladin says pithy words over the fallen foes, and with that single sentence, the battle-weary party regains the spirit and the strength to fight on. So you want to average about 4 battles per full heal up. The battles are tougher. You can get healed after fewer of them, blah, blah, blah. Hit points go to full, regain any recoveries. All expended powers are regained or recharged. Blah, 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 blah. This rule allows per day powers and spells to remain balanced relative to each other, regardless of whether the party is fighting once per week or 7 times a day. Yeah, okay. Another feature of this rule is that when the party has been beaten down, the best way to recover is to press on and win a few more battles. Alright, so... yeah, I guess I could see that then. So if you're doing a big dungeon, then you don't have to... you don't have to, like, do 4 battles or whatever and then say, okay, it's like 2 p.m. We're just gonna sit here and wait in this room, you know, for 18 hours. So we rest up. Or you don't have to say, okay, we run out of here and we go back to town and we spend all that, you know, it's just like, okay, you did your 4 battles, you've earned the heal up. You know, we'll do some narrative nonsense and you recover. It's a somewhat unique system. But yeah, because some characters might rely on daily powers a bit more than others. So I guess that keeps it somewhat balanced, that they are not just, like, out of commission. And yet the fighter that just uses at-will abilities can just keep going and going and going or whatever. So we may end up using that system then, 4 battles. But the idea overall is based around battles. It's a very combat-focused system. And most fantasy D20 games are combat-focused systems. Which is interesting because I tend to not prefer combat when you have creative solutions, and I think that's maybe where 13th Age lacks a little bit. But I'm also interested in 13th Age from a DM perspective. If I'm DMing, would I prefer this because it has fun tactical combat, and I'm going to be DMing for players that don't think of creative solutions regardless? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. It's an interesting system because the combat is pretty tactical and crunchy, but then out of combat is pretty loose and narrative, which is kind of what I want to go for. But for this session, we're mostly going to be looking at combat. Okay, so, right. So recoveries. You can use recoveries during quick rests in between battles. You can use 1 recovery to heal some health. Also certain abilities and things like that, like healing from, like, a cleric, that's all going to be based around your recovery and using recoveries. So all the characters are going to have different values for the recovery. The fighter will heal 1d10 plus 3, or an average of 8 for each recovery he uses, which is around 1/4, I suppose, of his hit points, which is similar to Shadow the Demon Lord, which cuts out the roll entirely and just says, yeah, it's 1/4 your hit points. Then powers. Every character is going to have a melee attack, ranged attack. This is the little formula for the fighter's melee attack. It's an at-will. He can use it as much as he wants. It never runs out. The attack formula is a d20 roll, plus your strength modifier, plus your level, plus the escalation die, which we'll get to, and plus any magical item bonuses you have, versus AC. What that comes down to us, mostly, is just going to be a d20 plus 4, plus the escalation die. And then if it hits, it does your weapon die, plus strength, times tier, plus magic item damage. So our tier is Adventurer. There's 3 tiers, Adventurer, Champion, and Epic. That corresponds to levels 1 through 4, 5 through 7, 8, 9, and 10, I believe. Your weapon die is based on your class and the weapon you're using. And weapons don't have much difference in this game. A lot of the special stuff that you might do in combat is based around your various powers that you get as your class. So your weapon really just determines like whether it uses one or two hands, whether it's melee or ranged, and then like the weight class, really. So here you have the fighter melee list. So our fighter, I don't know, I assume he's using a shield. He is not using a shield, but he is dual wielding. Okay, based on this pre-gen. And we could just change that. He has no inventory. He doesn't have anything assigned to him. And that's because it's all pretty loose. It doesn't really matter. Because in combat, it's all just kind of a numbers game. It feels pretty board gamey in that aspect. Some games, you know, make your weapon choice a much bigger deal. You know, you play like a narrative sort of powered by the apocalypse game like Dungeon World. It makes a big difference narratively in combat, whether you're using a spear or a dagger. But really here, it just comes down to, is it a small weapon? Is it a light weapon? Is it a heavy weapon? One or two hands. I don't know the rules on dual wielding, so let's go ahead and just change him. Let's make him sword and board. So that's going to bump up his AC by 1 because he has a shield now. And let's just give him a heavy one-handed weapon, which is a 1d8 longsword, which is what he had anyways. So that's it. It's that simple of a change. Again, I don't know the rules for dual wielding, but now we don't have to think about it. So really, we just change it to a shield, which gives him 1 extra AC. All the other stats are kind of derived based on the class and sort of the armor. And again, it's all pretty loose. Fighters usually wear heavy armor. For our purposes, it all provides about the same protection, whether you're wearing flexible chainmail or sturdy steel plate. It's all just a 15. It's pretty loose. If you are the odd fighter who prefers to fight only in light armor, knock yourself out. But you're still more likely to get knocked out of the battle than if you were wearing heavier stuff. And so you may ask yourself, if you're familiar with fantasy D20 games like this, what's the difference? What penalty do you have wearing heavy armor? The answer to that is, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't think there is any benefit to wearing light armor. I think you just are wearing heavy armor, and unless you have some, like, narrative thought in mind of why you'd pick light armor. Yeah. And then, you know, again, the fighter's just kind of assumed to be wearing heavy armor, because you can take the heavy warrior talent to just once per battle while wearing heavy armor take half damage from an attack. And I don't think... I don't know. Yeah, I haven't read the whole book. But I don't think there's any difference. It's just, it's not that kind of game, you know? So. Anyways. So that's that. Alright, so, we're 34 minutes in. I haven't really done anything. So, yeah, everyone's got a melee attack, range attack, which is all kind of just based on the class you are. And I think, you know, if I were playing, obviously I would say, okay, you know, write down that you're wearing heavy armor, that you have a longsword, and, you know, that you have a bow, probably. Is that what we have? Yeah, I mean, you could write down you have a longbow. It doesn't. This isn't a game that like tracks your inventory weight or like slots or anything like that. It's just like kind of within reason, you know, don't be a fuckhead. You know, you can't carry the entire dungeon on your back. You can carry stuff. We don't care. That seems to be a lot of the thought of 13th Age, is we don't really care. You know, you can care as much as you want. So again, it's like, why would I pick a longbow? Or why would I pick a short bow versus a longbow? I don't know. Fighters are familiar with all manner of ranged weapons. Sturdy longbows are common. Now I will say that's for a fighter. They're obviously pretty good with all weapons, and so they can kind of just use anything. But some of these classes that I looked at, like the cleric was a good example. Wherever the cleric was. So the cleric, if they want to take a heavy crossbow, they get -1 to all the attack rolls with it. If they take a short bow, -2 attack. Longbow, -5 attack. And that's also true, -2 for heavy one-handed or two-handed weapons. So they are penalized. You can still take it, you can still use it, but it's going to be rough being a cleric with a longbow. So that's the sort of stuff that I kind of would expect to see. It's just a lot of the martial classes don't have that, and it's just kind of up to you what you feel like. There isn't... there isn't really a reason to take a lighter weapon mechanically for them. As far as I can tell. I mean, anyone watching familiar with this system could tell me. So anyways, then you have some other features and stuff from either your race or class. So the half-elf, they get surprising as a battle, per battle power. So once per battle, they can just subtract 1 from the natural result of one of your own d20 rolls. You may ask, why would I ever want to subtract from my own rolls? And that's because 13th Age has a lot of effects from players and monsters related to the natural roll of a d20. And you see that a lot in the flexible attacks for fighters. So they get a bunch of these flexible attacks, which are triggered after you do a melee attack or a range attack, any sort of basic attack. Then you get to pick one flexible attack that applies, that is triggered, and you get to do the effect. So for Grim Intent, if you miss on an attack, and then the roll of your d20 is a naturally even number. So anyway, if you roll a 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 maybe, you can do Grim Intent afterwards. And the next time you would deal miss damage with a melee attack, add a weapon die to that damage. Now, I believe... well, I don't know. I don't know if this applies for that attack. I would think so. But it says the next time you would deal miss damage. I'm not quite sure, and we probably do want to figure that out. Heavy blows. Also, on any natural even miss, you gain a bonus to your miss damage with that attack equal to the escalation die. This one's much clearer. You gain a bonus to this attack. Miss damage. Because the melee attack, if it misses, it deals your level in damage to the creature regardless. So, normally that would be 1 damage. But this would also deal more equal to the escalation die. I think that's probably... Grim Intent is probably for the next time you would miss. And not this time. Because it's a much bigger effect. It adds your weapon die, a d8, to your miss. So you have to choose, do I want to deal an extra d8 the next time I miss, or do I want to deal an extra, 2 or 3 this time? And then there's also Brace for it, which is any miss, so, odd misses or whatever. Until the end of your next turn, first crit against you from a melee attack becomes a normal hit instead. So, anytime you're not using one of those other two, you just slap on brace for it, and you're good. So, but say you don't want brace for it, you want grim intent, and you rolled a 9, and it missed. You could use surprising to lower that number to an 8, so that you could then use grim intent. So there's a bunch of reasons that you'd want to change your d20 number slightly, even if it's going down, because a miss is still going to be a miss. It's just you might be able to get a benefit out of it. So there's that stuff. Then we have extra tough from being a fighter, so we get 9 recoveries instead of 8. Threatening, whenever an enemy attempts to disengage from us, takes a penalty to the roll equal to our dex or con, whichever is higher. And then we get some fun, more powerful actions that we can use in combat. So we have Cleave, once per battle. We can make a melee attack as a free action after one of my melee attacks drops an enemy to 0 health. And you'll see that a bunch of these abilities, any ones that have these little circles under feat, they have additional feats that you can put feat points into as you level up. So every level you get 1 feat. And so I went ahead and put one into... Or no, this was the pre-gen. The Cleave Adventurer feat, because we're at the Adventurer tier. If I have my move available, I can move before I make the Cleave attack to reach another enemy, which is pretty good. So that's once per battle. Comeback Strike, once per battle. After I miss on an attack, I can make another attack with a -2 penalty. And Counter Attack. Once per round, when the escalation die is even and an enemy misses me with a naturally odd melee attack roll. The very specific situation here. I can make a basic melee attack dealing half damage against that enemy as a free action. So, yeah, very specific, but there's no limit, really, other than once per round. So, there's that. Okay, and that's pretty much the fighter. That's all we really need to go over with the fighter. Not too complicated of a character at level 1. You got some fun options. You got your flexible attack, so even if you miss, it's still kind of interesting. You don't feel that bad about missing. And that's a pretty big deal, to be honest. That's a pretty big deal for most gamers. Because missing in a lot of games is just like, well, you suck, you're shit. Go sit down and shut up for the next 10 minutes while everyone else takes their fun turns. You missed, you idiot. But no, so having things happen regardless of missing, even a little bit, is still good. Okay, so then we have the Rogue. I haven't really looked at the Rogue, to be honest. I don't have to go over most of this stuff, so we'll just go over things that are different. I assume you're not dual wielding. Okay, but you do have a D8 on your attack. What is the Rogue D8 option? Probably a short sword or something. It is a short sword, yes, okay. And a 19 dex, 17 charisma, good stuff. So we do, of course, have the basic melee attack that we can do, but we also have these fun at-will powers. Deadly Thrust. So this you use against a staggered, non-mook enemy. So mooks are minions. They're little weenie enemies that can kind of be... they're kind of grouped together. You don't track individual health for them. And so you can kill multiple mooks with one big attack. If you hit hard enough. So a staggered non-mook enemy. Staggered means that they're at least at half health or below. And this allows you to add your dex and strength mod versus AC. But that's kind of bad for us because our rogue has a -1 strength mod. So I don't think we'll be using Deadly Thrust too much. Evasive Strike, one enemy. Seems pretty good. The special thing is it lets you pop free from the target. Pop free means that you can you're no longer engaged with them. So when you're engaged with an enemy, you're next to each other. You're sword on sword sort of engaged, and you can't freely move if you're engaged with an enemy without provoking opportunity attacks. So you can either attempt a disengage roll, which is sort of like a 50-50 chance of breaking free without provoking the op, or you can do some sort of ability that lets you pop free, such as evasive strike. Pretty good. Flying blade. This is a ranged attack that uses D4 damage instead of D8. And if our natural attack roll is even and one of my allies is engaged with the target, you can use your sneak attack damage for the round. Okay. And sure cut. Which on a miss deals your sneak attack damage +1 or plus level damage, which is 1. But you have to have momentum. So momentum is a thing that affects a lot of rogue abilities. You gain momentum by hitting an enemy with an attack. You lose it when you are hit by an attack. You can use momentum powers without losing momentum, but some you have to spend it. And I don't think you can stack momentum. You either have it or you don't. So that's something. So sure cut. You have to have it, but you don't spend it, I believe. Okay, sneak attack. Very big, important thing. Once per round, when you make a rogue melee weapon attack against an enemy engaged with one or more of your allies, you can deal extra damage if your attack hits. And this is the chart for sneak attack damage. So I think for us, it's 1d4. I think. And we have the feat in it, which also works for the first round of combat against enemies with a lower initiative than me. Okay. And then trap sense. If you do a skill check involving a trap and you get a naturally even failure, you can re-roll the skill check once. If it's a natural odd roll, you can force the trap to re-roll the attack once. Oh, if a attack roll against you is a naturally odd roll. Okay. We also have taken the improved sneak attack talent. Every class has a certain number of talents when you first create the character. And usually you pick like around half the total number of talents, for some customization. So we've got an improved sneak attack. So we have this chart instead, and we have a 1d6 sneak attack. Seems like a good thing to take. We have the murderous talent. So against staggered enemies, our crit range expands by 2. So we crit on an 18, 19, or 20. And Shadow Walk as a move action as many times as we want. It's an attack roll versus mental defense. If you... So is this against... This must be against... I don't know what this is against. This is a weird thing. Remove yourself from play at the start of your next turn. Return anywhere nearby that you could have moved to normally during your turn. Deal double damage with your first rogue attack that turn. If you miss, no effect. Can't attempt to Shadow Walk again until next turn. Oh, okay. Before you use your standard action this turn, if you're not engaged, you can make the following attack against all nearby enemies, targeting the enemy among them with the highest mental defense. Okay, it all makes sense now. That's not bad, though, except you have to do it before you take an action, standard action. And basically, you skip a turn. Yeah, you skip a turn, you come back next turn, and deal double damage with your first rogue attack that turn. Okay. So you can see, it's all pretty gamey, right? And I think overall, the combat system is pretty good for people that don't tend to be creative in combat or anything like that. That aren't going to think of like, oh, I'm going to try and hide behind this and sneak around behind this guy. You know, they're the type of players that look at their character sheet and like, oh, I can do this, okay. And often in many games that comes down to I swing my sword, and that's what D&D 4th edition did differently. Is really like you never just swung your sword. You know, you were always doing something special with your attack, with your turn, and unfortunately, that led to a lot of times of people just sitting there looking through all their powers and their sheets and sheets of powers, deciding what's best on this turn. And I don't know how 13th Age deals with that as you go up in levels. But at least at level 1, it doesn't seem to be too bad. Doesn't even seem to be too bad. Okay, so that's the rogue. Obviously does not want to be engaged with targets and wants to kind of just keep bopping around and stabbing stuff. Okay, then we have the Explorer Wizard. And oh boy, oh yeah, plenty of shit. Plenty of shit. So, the Wizard, High Elf Wizard, they get the High Blood Teleport, so once per battle as a move action, they can just teleport nearby. They do have melee and ranged attacks if they ever want to do that. But obviously, mostly they just get some spells. And we start with cantrips. Cantrips are exclusive to wizards. None of these are combat or anything like that. These are all very minor. It's kind of narrative, out of combat stuff. Mage hand, light, knock. I love the knock description though. You know, traditionally knock is a spell that just unlocks locks. That's what it does. Knock in this case, this cantrip summons a magical servitor 3 to 4 times as big as your closed fist that swarms around the door and attempts to punch or push it open. Yeah, that's knocking. So most of these are at wills. I don't know, like, Spark is listed differently. It's pretty much also at will, as far as I understand. So a lot of just minor stuff that we're not going to encounter too much in combat. But we can light if we want. Actually, just make a light. Cool. So that's good stuff. Then, you can pick a number of first level spells, and I believe you can change those out every day, but most people are not going to do that. Even I don't usually ever bother to do that. I pick my spells I like and leave the rest behind. But one of the ones you can pick is utility spell. And we've actually taken our feet into this. And so utility spell gives you, depending on the spell slot that you use it for, obviously we're first level, gives you a number of utility spell options. And at first level we have Disguise Self, Feather Fall, and Hold Portal. And you don't have to pick one of the utility spells to take. And like each day, until you use one, you technically have all 3 available. And then you pick one once you want to use one, and then that's your spell for the day that you can use once. And I say day, you know what I mean. So Disguise Self, obviously, doesn't need much. Featherfall, obviously. And Hold Portal to prevent creatures from breaking through any door, even if they shatter it to pieces. Adventure tier creatures can never get through. So there's that. And then since we have the feet into utility spell, we can actually pick 2 of the spells per day. So you could cast one of them twice, I think. Or 2 of them once. Then the other spells we've taken, Magic Missile, of course. This is our at-will standard attack. If all you ever want to do is just use Magic Missile, there you go. It's an automatic hit. 2d4 plus any magic item force damage. For us, it's just 2d4 damage, which is not a lot. Certainly not a lot. That's going to average out to about 5 damage a turn. But it's an automatic hit, and you can use it forever. Charm Person, if they have 40 health or fewer. Now, it doesn't say max health, or it's not based on hit dice. So, I feel like if you weaken a powerful creature, you could Charm Person it. Which I guess kind of makes sense. I don't think that's that ridiculous of a thought. It's just not how D&D and Pathfinder and stuff usually work. Acid Arrow, this is a daily spell, so we're not going to be able to get many uses out of this one. There's still an attack. There's an attack roll for this one against physical defense, but it does 4d10 acid damage and 5 ongoing. So this is definitely what you use on the big boy. And even if you miss, they still take 5 ongoing acid damage. That's 5 acid damage every turn, every round, until they save against it. And if you miss, you also regain the spell during your next quick rest. Fucking just, yeah, that's fantastic. That's so good. I don't remember that. I don't think that was much in 4th edition. Because it was really, really crushing in 4th edition when you missed your big daily spell. Dailies almost always did something on a miss, like did half damage or did something. So it wasn't a total loss, but it was like, oh, fuck, man, that was my shit for the whole day. That was my big thing. So that's fantastic, being able to use it in the next battle. Then we also have, so we've taken some other stuff. We've got Cantrip Mastery. Lets you use cantrips as a quick action, which is fine. Polysyllabic Verbalations, which we're supposed to rename all of our daily and recharge spells with really extravagant names. And they take a quick action to cast as well as a standard action, but they also have a small bonus effect appropriate to the situation. It's a very, it's for those really creative players, which I typically am. But for this session, we will not be utilizing that. And then we also have Counter Magic, so whenever a creature nearby we can see casts a spell, we can try and cancel it. And Ritual Magic, which we can cast our spells as rituals. And we're not going to get into the ritual mechanics, because I haven't really read them. But, yeah. Cyclic. Do we have any cyclics? I don't know. I think so. I don't think I have any cyclic. Okay, anyways, so that's the wizard. Mostly they're just going to be casting Magic Missile, Acid Arrow once in a while. The other fun stuff, I don't know if I'm going to have the sort of juggling skills to pay attention to all this stuff and come up with creative solutions in this dungeon crawl. So they're just there because I wanted a wizard. All right? And I probably would have picked different spells. Other than Charm Person, but I'm not going to go into it. Finally, the Cleric. This one I had to make myself. So this is a dwarf, because we have 3 elves, by the way. So it's like, well, we need something else, so I made a dwarf. And then I rolled 4d6 drop low for all the abilities. You can either do that or point by, however you want. But I ended up fairly good, except I did roll a 4 for one of my abilities. And you can rearrange them however you want, so I decided to throw it into Charisma. And this dwarven cleric is just the most curmudgeon-y, ugly, asshole bastard you could ever imagine. And he's just pissed off. He's got to travel with these 3 fucking elves. But, you know, he wants his treasure, so he's going with them. And, you know, he just happens to have the power of healing. So, you know, he does what he has to. But he's not happy about it. He doesn't like anybody. Alright, anyways. So the dwarf racial power here is that's your best shot. If you're ever hit by an enemy attack, you can immediately use a recovery to heal. But if the escalation die is less than 2, you only get half the healing. Of course, melee and ranged sort of stuff. He will probably be using Javelin of Faith, though, for his attacks if he's attacking. It's an at-will versus physical defense. And, yeah, I mean, it's pretty much designed to kind of be the cleric's at-will attack. He has Heal as a special cleric feature. He can use this twice per battle, only once per turn. And it just lets the target heal using a recovery. That's it. It's a very simple system. We've taken the feat with it, so now instead of being next to an ally, we can be heal a nearby ally instead. So he can kind of just park himself in one place in the back and just heal and shoot javelins. And that's a quick action, so you can heal and shoot a javelin on the same turn. Then for talents, you have to pick 3 domains. I went with healing. So whenever he lets someone heal, they also add 2 hit points to the recovery. Protection / community. Once per battle, I can affect 2 additional allies when I cast a spell for broad effects. And sun / anti-dead. Every attack I make deals holy damage instead of other types of damage unless I choose otherwise. And obviously, in the Tomb of the Serpent Kings, we're going to be fighting undead. And holy damage is good. You also have invocations for each of those domains. These are quick action, daily abilities. So the Invocation of Healing, this battle we gain an additional use of the heal spell. And the first heal spell we cast afterwards allows them to use a free recovery instead of spending one. This battle crits against you and your nearby allies, deal normal damage instead of crit damage. And Sun, when you cast a daily cleric spell this battle, roll a d6. If you roll less than or equal to the escalation die, regain the use of that daily spell after the battle. So, yeah, all the invocations are kind of battle-long effects that you can use once per day. Our other spells, Bless. This is a daily quick action spell. Choose up to 3 nearby creatures, including ourselves, +1 attack until the end of the battle. That's if you cast it for broad effects. If you cast it for power, it affects 1 nearby ally, but they get a +2 attack bonus until the end of the battle. So you can choose. I like that system a lot as well. That's pretty cool. Cure Wounds. You or a nearby ally can heal using a free recovery. Pretty simple, just more healing. Again, it's a daily, but you know, he's our heal bot. And then Spirits of the Righteous, 1 nearby enemy, d20 roll versus mental defense, 4d6 holy damage. And your nearby ally with the fewest hit points gains +4 bonus to AC until the end of my next turn. And that's per battle. Okay, good. I think we're all good. I think that's everything I need to go over. It's a lot of stuff. We're an hour in. We have yet to start the adventure. I know. But this is also kind of just like a sort of a let's read almost of 13th Age, and I just kind of wanted to discuss it. So I mean, who's counting the minutes here, right? All right. So, I do have the whole map here. Someone has made a very nice updated map for Tomb of the Serpent Kings, designed for virtual tabletop use, but still, overall, it's just a nice, colorful map of the whole dungeon. I could show you the whole thing, and probably inevitably you will end up seeing the whole thing. But for now, I have this from the perspective of the players. And so that means that Fog of War is in effect. And I have the warrior selected here. And you can move. And you can see that his vision changes. And we have the warm sun outside, briefly illuminating, you know, the interior hallway here. And as we step in, we will uncover more and more. Okay. So let's get the setup. The actual setup for the adventure is pretty light. You know, they give you a few examples of things you could say to get your PCs to the dungeon, but it doesn't really matter. It's old school. You're here at the dungeon, do the fucking dungeon. We found an ancient map, and we're here to find treasure. That's why we're here. Okay, and there's the whole dungeon, blah, blah, blah. So I don't want to read much of this, I will say. Because we kind of want to just experience it as we go. So I'm going to try to bounce my eyeballs around so I don't read too much. All right, the entrance hall. A long corridor with 4 open rooms. The hallway ends at a large barred door made of stone. Okay, so there's nothing untoward as we step into the cool, damp halls of this ancient tomb. The fighter is out front. The rogue close at his heels. Our two spellcasters lingering behind slowly, waiting for the fighter to give the all clear. And we approach this first alcove. 2 alcoves. The guard tombs. These small rooms are identical in size and content. They both contain a wooden coffin with a clay statue of a snake man warrior inside. See, so that's where the solo thing sort of falls apart, because I would have had to stop reading at they both contain a wooden coffin, and then that would have been it. And then we have to decide had we wanted to open these things and just to see what's in them. And then that's how you'd present it to your players, of course. You would just say, yes, you see 2 alcoves, you know, on the sides, and they both contain this sort of, you know, somewhat rotted wooden coffins or sarcophagi there. And then the players would decide to step in and say, I'm going to crack one of these things open and see what's inside. But I really, you know, I just, the Foundry system, you know, having this fog of war and having, you know, the players actually move their tokens through and start to see more and more of the room. I mean, they have no idea what's in front of them, but it allows them to see everything that's on the map as they go through, and, you know, gives them that kind of the freedom to step forward. And it also solves a lot of issues of, like, where are you? Oh no, I wasn't in the room. I was back here. I didn't go in. Like, you know, it kind of settles all that. So I really like it. I do wish that I was like a programmer. I had those skills and I could actually adapt my other system to Foundry completely. I mean, I probably could pay someone to do it, or to, like, you know, set up the framework so that I could put in, like, all the actual data and everything. But yeah, I don't know. Okay, so let's, for the sake of experimentation, learning everything, let's say that the fighter steps up to this coffin and wants to bust it open. Now, I didn't give them money. I didn't give them equipment or anything like that. I think we're just kind of assuming that we're just kind of assuming we have kind of all the basic adventuring equipment, and we're not going to fuss about that too much. That kind of seems in line with the system. So I think we'd have this be, I mean, probably if I were a DM, I wouldn't even make a roll, because it's just like, It's this sort of rotted wooden coffin. He's gonna use a crowbar or something and just crank it open. I don't think I'd even make a strength check. But, again, for the sake of just argument and learning and things like that, we want to look at DCs. Which is going to be 185. So, one of the concepts here is a environment tier. Any place in the game world that a player might want to make a skill check is an environment, of which there are 3 tiers: Adventurer, Champion, and Epic. Adventure environments are city streets, wilderness areas, shallow dungeons, regular old ruins, that sort of thing. Basically anywhere a first-level adventuring party might go. Champion environments are heavy-duty locales. The deeper dungeons, danker swamps, guarded gates of big cities, an inn that's actually the secret redoubt of a blue dragon sorcerer. And epic environments are typically related to icons, unique villains, deep underworld locations or creatures, blah, blah, blah. Adventurer, Champion, Epic. At first level, they usually spend time in Adventurer tier environments unless they're pig-headed and barge into a Champion level area. So there's this environment chart by level. First through third, you're always going to be an Adventurer environment, unless, you know, your players really go off the beaten path. From there, you know, it starts to tick away towards more into champion stuff, and then around level 7 you might experience some epic areas, so on and so forth, and then at level 10 you're always in epic areas. And then here you have the the average DCs, the difficulty checks. Actually, what does DC stand for? They don't even say here. Whatever. You know, the DC, the number you need to reach in order to pass. So the normal task in an adventurer tier, level 1 skill check DC is 15. That's the baseline. So I mean, here you go. So a locked door in an adventurer tier obstacle, DC 15 to open, one way or another. And that's it. So the DC really is never going to be less than 15. And if you are thinking of doing a DC of less than 15, just probably let the players pass it. Like, don't even why bother? You're really just going to fuck over someone for no reason, essentially. So yeah, DC is the baseline, or 15 is the baseline, and it goes on from there. So in this case, I don't think it would be a 15 to crack it open. I think they would just do it. But if you did want to roll to get a 15, you'd just click strength. And this would show you the formula for the skill check. D20 plus your ability modifier plus your level plus background plus bonus. So if you had any situational bonuses that might apply, I would probably argue that a crowbar is a situational bonus, but, you know, whatever. And then background. So backgrounds replace the skill system. This is a lot like Shadow of the Demon Lord or Shadows of Adventure, where you don't have a specific skill list that you put points into or anything like that. Instead, your character has backgrounds. And character creation, you get 8 points to split amongst your backgrounds. And you can't put more than 5 points into a single background. And these are things like, you know, blacksmith, fishmonger, you know, scout, spy, guard, you know, anything possible that could be a profession or a interest, a hobby, whatever, any sort of background to your character that you could come up with and kind of write down. And you put points into that, and those points, if you can convince the GM that your background applies to the role, you get that amount of bonus to your roll. So if I had a background here of, say, blacksmith for our fighter, and I convinced the GM that, oh, well, you know, blacksmith obviously involves a lot of physical labor. I've gotten a lot of muscles over the years. Now, you could argue that's depicted in your strength, but those are disconnected. You know, you could have a low strength score and be a blacksmith and still, I think, conceivably make that argument. I think the book even says, like, GMs, just be generous, you know. If it's even somewhat plausible, just give it to them. So the game is kind of designed around that concept of if you can make even a half-hearted argument for your background, you're probably going to get it. And, you know, you're going to get at least probably a 2 or 3 bonus to your roll. And I think that's kind of how it's all balanced. So, you know, between all that, we could say we get a +4 to our roll, and we roll that, and there was our strength check. We rolled an 11, +3 for our strength, +1 for our level, +4 for the crowbar, background, whatever. We got a 19. We passed. We burst open this wonderful wooden coffin. And, of course, we find a clay statue of a Snake Man warrior. The text here is a little vague. Each contain the statues contain. I think the statues contain these things. So we find this clay statue of a Snake Man warrior inside. I think probably plenty of groups would just move on at that point. They'd break open the other coffin, find this statue inside, and move on. But certain enterprising groups may also smash the statues, which would contain a gold amulet, a dried snake skeleton, and a cloud of poison gas. Now, in the old school terms, this would just do a straight D6 damage to you with no chance of saving or anything like that. And I'm not familiar enough to really say, but I mean, here's a poison arrow trap. So had they tried to check out the statues beforehand, this would have been a DC 15 to kind of check it out. You know, trap finding thing probably would have been wisdom or something like that. And it goes in here talking about the philosophy of traps and how we've kind of moved away from this sort of save or die system and all that sort of thing. And traps should be more interesting than just attrition. But anyways, so then +5 versus physical defense, because this is obviously a physical effect. And they recommend 2d6 damage, 5 ongoing poison damage, single use. I think this is basically a poison arrow trap. Although I don't know if I'd do the 2d6. It doesn't make a lot of sense compared to just the ongoing 5. So let's do it that way. So we're going to roll +5 versus the physical defense of the warrior. So we're just going to type that in. Roll D20 +5. Okay. And I rolled, of course, a 19. It's for a total of 24 versus 19 of the fighter. Or 14 of the fighter. So that is a hit. And he's going to take 5 ongoing poison damage. And I think there is probably... I don't know if there's condition for ongoing damage. I don't think so. I think we just kind of have to type that in. So you can go to effects. I mean, obviously it'd be easier to not make an actual effect and to just do it. But here, 5 poison damage. Done. Okay. So, ongoing damage. This is a system I pretty much took on over to Shadows of Adventure. But let's see exactly what 13th Age says for ongoing damage. You take ongoing damage at the end of your turn, immediately before you roll your save, which is 11 plus unless otherwise specified. Oh, and actually ongoing stacks in this game. That's interesting. So if the Ifrit with the flaming sword hits you twice, dealing 10 ongoing fire damage, you'll take 20 at the end of your turn, rolling a save against each of those ongoing damage effects, 2 total. So you roll once for the first one, and then again for the second one. Okay, interesting. So yeah, saves in this game are either easy, normal, or hard, which is a 6 or higher, 11 or higher, or 16 or higher. And there's no standard bonuses to saves. So that's how it always is, by default, unless you have some special feature. Even at level 10, you need to roll 11 or higher. So it's just pure kind of chance-based. But there's a lot of effects, I imagine, that can mess with that. Okay, so immediately then we're going to take the 5 damage, and now we get to make a save, so it'll be a normal save. We rolled a 5, so we failed. And then you'd take another 5, roll again. We rolled a 1. Another 5. We're down to 18 now. I rolled a 10. Jeez, this is unfortunate. 13. Another failure. I'm going to die unless somebody steps in to help me. Okay, there we go. We finally rolled an 11. Barely. So we got it. Okay. So that's done. We can delete that. We're now nearly dead. We're staggered. We're at less than half health, which has no mechanical differences by itself. You don't suffer anything from being staggered. It's just there's a lot of abilities and effects and things like that that are based around staggered individuals. Okay, so... Jesus. So, I don't know if we could even... We probably could quick rest. I don't think anyone... I don't think I as a DM, would say you cannot quick rest. And that, again, just lets us use a recovery. Alternatively... Okay, so if we go to the cleric... So we have a healer here. So the game does not mention then, of course, as far as like what it means to be per battle. I take that to mean like until your next quick rest. And you can only quick rest once between battles. So I think really I could use heal twice at this point. And again, we get to add 2 to all our heals. So I can heal twice. I could also use Cure Wounds, but that's a daily, so we're not going to do that. Okay, so I'm going to heal twice. So he actually has to spend... We're going to add +2. He does have to spend the recovery. But that was a pretty good roll. He rolled an 8 +3 plus the 2 for 13. And then he's going to use another recovery, same thing, for the second use of her heal. Okay. He actually maxed out at 15. That was very good. Okay, and then we would do the quick rest. Because then that gives our heal uses back. And if he wasn't at full health, I could have used another recovery. But you only have so many recoveries per day. And again, when the cleric uses heal, that uses your recovery. So if you don't have recoveries to spend, you can't heal. Which is, you know, there's nothing left in the tank for you, essentially. Okay, but we're fine. We got it. So that was probably not worth our character. Not effect. Inventory. Now, if I add loot, I guess I just go here and we type golden amulet. And then... Now, for me, okay, I'm just going to tell you. If you're playing, if you don't DM, if you're just a player, write down where you got the item. That helps your DM immensely, at least in my case. My players never remember where they got anything, and then I don't ever remember where they got things, and so then I just have to, like, make up new information or values about it. So I'm just going to write found at start of tomb and coffin. Because I, as a DM, don't usually tell the players the value of an item when they find it. That feels kind of wrong, unless they, like, try and appraise it on the spot, but why would they care? They just take it. So I don't usually say it, and then 3 sessions later, they go back to town, and they, oh, I want to sell this golden amulet. It's like, where did you get that? I don't know. You gave it to me. That's always the response. You gave it, so who else would give it to you? And then I'm like, okay, I don't know. And I probably was running off a module or something, or I have some information somewhere that says it's worth 5 gold pieces. But then I have to make up a new number, and then it's like, oh yeah, it's worth 3 silver. What? 3 silver? What? Yeah, anyways. Okay. We continue on. And this pack is going to slowly move up now. Okay, here we have something new. We got something new here. 3 and 4. So to the north, the Scholar Tomb. Oh, well, okay, let me mention the lesson here. The lesson from that coffin. That the dungeon is organized, there are patterns, there's hidden treasure, there's also hidden danger. The PCs will probably approach the second coffin with more caution and earn their reward without the danger by using their brains and a rock or long stick. Yes, so that's the thought. Whether that actually happens or not is, you know, that differs. Okay, the Scholar Tomb. Similar to the guard tombs, but inside the coffin is a clay statue of a thin and sly-looking snake man scholar. Its scrolls have crumbled to dust. The statue contains the same amulet, snake skeleton, and poison as the others. And I would agree, actually, that the players probably, or these characters probably would try and get at the other ones. Because they are in this place for treasure. So, again, like, it, yeah, I mean, how would I, get at this coffin without getting harmed by the poison gas? I mean, it's lame to kind of take their example, but yeah, using a stick, to kind of just, well, no, I guess a rock, maybe. Yeah, I guess that's what I would probably do. I'd, like, lift the statue up a little bit out of the coffin, kind of prop it against the wall, and then stand like here, and just chuck a big rock at it to bust it open. That's probably what I would do. I don't think our wizard would have any amazing solutions to the problem. Mage hand... At best, it's about half as strong as the wizard's own strongest hand. at worst, it's half as strong as the wizard when they're weak from a bad fever. Yeah, I don't think the wizard probably could. He's got an 8 strength. He would not chuck a rock very hard. And nothing else that I could just manifest. Unless the DM did allow magic missile to, it does do force damage, and I would make that argument. That it is just a ball of concussive force that's probably as damaging as a rock. So yeah, either throw a rock or just use magic missile and break it open. And get that. Now, hold on. Can you just copy this over? You can, look at that. Copied over. With the text, too. Okay. Not that that's going to be that common of a feature. But you can do that for a lot of different effects and loot and stuff like that. You can just copy it over from sheet to sheet. A clay statue... I mean, it's the same thing. It's just a coffin instead of a sarcophagus. But I guess, yeah, the warrior would probably... Well, I guess the rogue would, like, check for traps on this one, like, straight away, because it's a different thing. It's a coffin. So the rogue would check for traps, and that would be a wisdom roll, I suppose. His wisdom's kind of shit. But he does have a trap sense. So if he gets a naturally even failure on the roll, he can re-roll once. I would assume the rogue has some sort of background related to it. Probably for like a +3 or 4. So we'll just go with that. Oh, I can just click +4. And he got a 23. Pretty good. He rolled an 18. So there's no traps there. You can be sure of that. The warrior then moves the coffin lid, cracks it open, and I guess they would repeat the same steps, and we'll give the wizard this amulet. Okay, and then the last one, the sorcerer tomb. So another coffin. And we'll repeat the same steps, I suppose. And we find a silver ring. Okay, so we're gonna give the cleric his amulet. So we all have amulets. We're all happy with it. The ring. It's a magical but cursed ring. And this brings into the question then of what do you do with magic items? Do you explain once your players find the item what it does exactly? Page 284. Let's see what they just say about magic items. It does seem like they have some very specific rules about magic items. Our core idea is that true magic items are amazing and rare. Permanent magic items only come into adventurers' hands when they deserve them, as loot during adventures or rewards for success. Okay. So then, yeah, okay. Every magic item in 13th Age is alive, possesses a personality you have to interact with when you start using the item, establishing and maintaining a rapport with it. And I think this is one of those things that really just going to depend on the GM and the group and how you like to play. Some people prefer just a much more traditional, just like, yep, here's your +1 sword or something like that. Or, you know, magic items that are just a lot more spontaneous and kind of unpredictable. Or, you know, much more gamified, sort of like, yeah, this is boots of teleportation. And then there's this approach where magic items are like alive and, you know, sort of communicate with their wielder in some way. When you acquire a magic item, it's yours in a personal way. You probably dream about it. So, I mean, yeah, so it's obviously a couple questions of like, how common do you want magic items to be? And how impactful do you want magic items to be? How many magic items do you want your players to have at any given moment? So, 13th Age clearly has some very specific ideas about magic items, and I'm gonna have to read this a little bit more. But I think Tomb of the Serpent King, the way that they're presenting it, and kind of the way the old school way to present it is just like, this is a magic item. You probably don't even know that it's magical when you see it. You just see a ring. And then once you put it on, you realize something horrible. Your fingernail becomes long and bifurcated and pointed and can be used like a poison dagger. But each morning, and you wouldn't find this out until the next morning when you actually make a save versus poison. And take damage. And then, God forbid, you take 6 damage. And your finger falls off and turns into a snake. So, I mean, that's, again, another big question of like, and this just kind of depends on the GM and the group and stuff like that. You find this ring. Do you tell your players that it is A, magical, and B, cursed? Do you tell your players that it's magical? Do you tell your players that it's magical and it does this if you put it on? And don't mention the curse? Or do you say nothing and it's just a ring? It really depends. I can't say which way is the best or what you should do or anything like that. It just kind of depends on the group and how you like to play. Do you have players that enjoy or are not going to be like devastated if they put on a cursed ring, but you know, because they're just not sure. I think it just, yeah. I think if you understand that you're playing a game where items could be cursed, like, I think this one is relatively minor, and again, that ties into the lesson. And it's not stated. I assume that once you put it on, you can't take it off normally without some sort of like remove curse spell or something like that. So you just can't take it off. So I think I would probably just say, yeah, you find a silver ring. And then if someone says that they put it on, you'd say that, okay, you know, this happens to your finger. You can use it as a poison dagger. And then I would probably tell them the curse. And then tell them they also can't take it off normally. I think there is an argument to be made to not tell them the curse effect. Other than the fact that they can't take it off. But I don't know. In our case, we're just gonna hold on to it. So the fighter's just gonna grab this silver ring. Found on statue at start of tomb. Okay. Shall we continue on? We want to get to some combat, right? We're an hour and 40 minutes in. Okay. Let us continue on. I'll step forward a little bit. Fighter, whoops. Fighter's gonna step up to this door. He's gonna, or no, maybe the thief should check for traps. Because now we know there's traps afoot. So the thief is gonna make his trap check. We'll do the same thing. Wisdom, we'll say plus 4. Say he's good at traps. Okay, he rolled a 7. Because he ended up rolling a 2. So then our trap sense comes in. We are involving traps. I mean, we don't know if there's a trap, but this is part of some sort of check involving theoretical traps. It was a natural even failure. Because that just refers to the dice roll. I'm pretty sure. So yes, we can re-roll the skill check once. So we will re-roll the skill check once. We got a 17. That is a success. Is there a trap here? Yes, there is. So it's a large door barred with a lengthy piece of stone hung on 2 iron pegs set into either side of the door frame. So we can tell that it's going to require multiple people to lift the door, lift the bar. And the rogue has deduced that once this bar is fully removed, a trap will be activated. And a huge stone hammer will swing down from the ceiling that he is now pointing out to us, aiming straight for our backs. So this is pretty good, because now we understand the trap. We understand what's going to happen. The idea is that 3 of us will have to come up here and lift this big bar across this, set of double doors here. And yes, I know there's only 2 squares, but the 3 of us can fit in there to lift this bar. We'll be crammed in. But now the rogue is telling us that as soon as that bar is lifted up all the way and the door is about to open, this big hammer will swing down and smash into all their backs. Based on, his deductions, there is room. There would be a small gap on either side against the wall where we could avoid being hit by this hammer. But now the question is, even though we know that, how can we prevent this from occurring? I think there's probably a number of solutions here. But I would say your best solution would be disabling the hammer somehow. Yeah, that would be my initial thought. I don't know, again, the GM would have to kind of say and describe, and it's not really described in the book, in the pages, how the hammer is presented, like on the ceiling. Is it visible? Is it just kind of like in a recess and you can kind of make out that there's a hammer up there that's going to swing down? Or is it like a hidden door up there that's going to suddenly open as the hammer falls, and it's a lot harder to get at it? I think that if it is visible, going up there with like a saw or something, I don't know, it's probably all stone, right? So I don't think you could saw through anything. So assuming that it's all stone, let's say that it is visible. The hammer is up there. It's a big stone. It kind of blends in with the ceiling because it's all made out of the same stone material. And maybe that, like, it's almost seamless, but you can tell there's the outline of this big stone hammer that will then just drop and swing in once the trap is triggered. Let's describe it like that. So it's flush with the ceiling, is what I'm saying. The whole hammer. Now, I don't know if you could make the argument to a DM that hold portal would count for preventing movement. It's not really a door, and the spell does seem kind of clearly a door. But I don't know. I think if a player made that argument to me and wanted to use their hold portal spell, for that, I'd probably allow it. I think that's probably okay. Now it's saying hold portal. Oh, I see. This pre-gen gave 2 slots to utility spells, so I can use 4 of them per day with the feat in there. They really went in on utility. Okay, so then, yeah, I'm gonna give myself that argument that hold portal will count. And we're counting the hammer as an adventurer tier creature. So for 10 minutes, this hammer will be trying desperately to just smash downwards. And will be unable to. So we need to... I think you just click this. Yeah, and then that ticks down to 3. And it links the utility spell in chat. Maybe I also should have just clicked utility hold portal. I don't know. It doesn't matter. We did it. We have succeeded. And the door is open. We are safe and sound. And there we go, the door. Okay, and what do we see when we peek into this room? The burial chamber of a decoy snake man king and his 2 brides. On the north wall are 3 wooden coffins, painted with stylized sleeping snake men. The coffin in the middle is larger and more ornate. Each coffin contains a skeleton who will immediately attack if their rest is disturbed. Okay, so we don't see any immediate danger. This warrior steps in. So we're all in here. And we see 3 more coffins. So, of course, we want more golden amulets, like all the other coffins had. So the warrior is going to step up to crack open this first coffin here. And that immediately triggers some skeletons to burst out of all 3. And for the sake of balance... which is not an OSR mentality. For the sake of balance, we're going to have 4 skeletons pop out. Okay. So, the original thing, obviously, is just skeleton. HD 2, morale 12, attack 1d6 with claws. But, these days, you know, we like more fun stuff than that. So, for skeletons, there's 3 in the 13th Age SRD. The Decrepit Skeleton, which is a level 1 mook. And then there's the Warrior and the Archer. The Archer's level 1, the Warrior is level 2. And a basic balanced encounter at first level is a number of first level creatures equal to the number of player characters. So 4 level 1s. A level 2 kind of throws that off a little bit, but there is an adjust slider here where you can automatically dial up or down all the stats of the enemy to make them whatever level you want. Within reason, it does kind of break some things as you go. But I've done that. I have level 1 skeleton. So we're going to pop 2 of those out. And then I've got a couple archers. So we'll see. You know, we'll say that one of these coffins, they were doubling up. Okay, so we have our first encounter. very cramped. And so what you would do, again, we're using a grid here, but I don't want to actually use the grid. I want to embrace this kind of zone mentality. So what you would do, or what I think you would do, for when you have an encounter going, when you start an encounter, is you want to clearly delineate zones. Because the way that 13th Age works is that you're either next to something, you're either next to an ally or engaged with an enemy, which means you're right next to each other, or you are nearby everything else. And everything that's nearby something else is considered to be within like one movement range. So you don't count specific squares, you don't use squares at all, but for our purposes, everything within one zone is considered to be nearby. So this creature, whoops, this archer up here, I don't want to show you too much, but this archer up here, he could, if he wanted, move all the way down here on his turn with one move, because this is all going to be one zone, so that's all nearby. And in a dungeon, obviously, it's pretty convenient to have each room be a zone. But if you have a big room, you could separate it into 2 zones or 3 zones. Like if you had a nightclub or something, that's all one big room. But you could have like behind the bar or something. By the bar be one zone, and the stage be another zone, you know, and then the general area of the room be another zone. Because anything that's more than one zone, or everything that's outside of the zone, would be considered far away. And again, it's all just kind of meant to be not that specific. So if we had our wizard go out here, that's really not that far away, but due to the zone, you might just say, oh, you're far away. Because really what you care about is then like the mechanical differences. Most spells and most effects, most attacks, whatever, can only be used on nearby targets. So if you're far away, you know, they can't interact with you as much, but you can't interact with them as much. And they can get to you, it's just going to take like their whole turn. Okay, so this room, one zone, there you have it. What we're going to do, we're going to highlight all these and then click their combat state. And here we have our combat encounter. So we're going to roll everyone's initiative. So there you have all of our initiatives. The cleric rolled an 8. And these skeletons, 2 of them rolled really well. And then we're going to begin combat. And, you know, it's classic initiative. You go in order, whoever rolled highest down the line. And it doesn't change from round to round. And so we will just go. So we have the first archer, this archer. And we're counting these 2 warriors as being engaged with our warrior. So these guys, probably if they're smart, will attack one of the squishy spellcasters, because that is kind of their benefit. They can snipe. So here we have the sheet for the archer. I don't know how much we can shrink this, but there you go. Okay. So obviously they're going to use their short bow, and let's target the little squishy wizard. So you're going to click on the wizard, click T, maybe? Or does that not work anymore? It worked before. There it is. Okay, maybe I have to mouse over. Okay, so that's targeting that now. You don't have to do that. You can do things a little bit more manually, but and let me get my chat log there. Okay, so we've targeted the wizard. We're going to roll for the short bow. And this was the skeleton archer's roll. He rolled a 17 +7 for a 24. And since we've targeted the wizard, Foundry can then check it against his AC and tell us that it is indeed a hit, because he does not have a 24 AC. So it does 6 damage, because we're not rolling for their damage. With Foundry, it wouldn't have made much difference, but in person, obviously, it's a big time saver. So we're going to just right-click on this, and that will automatically apply the 6 points of damage to the wizard. And that is that archer's turn. Okay, the warrior. So that's this one. And we can bring up his numbers. Yeah, these guys are obviously not too special. They don't have a lot going on for them. Just basic bitch skeletons. Certainly not enemies that I would really love to play. And I believe I actually have, for my system, some more interesting skeletons taken from some other games, I think. But okay, so he's going to target the fighter. He's going to roll his spear. He rolled a 12 versus AC, which is, of course, not going to be a hit. And there's no miss effect, so that is just that. Pretty simple. All right, the Explorer Wizard. Our turn. Yeah, there's a lot of windows here. Okay, I mean, pretty much we're just going to use Magic Missile, because there's not that many options here for our old... We're not going to waste Acid Arrow on any of these mooks, which aren't mooks. Any of these goons. So we want to deal with these archers. So the wizard is going to target this archer. I don't think we have to click on it. There you go. And roll Magic Missile. And it's an automatic hit, of course, and does 6 force damage. No, you shouldn't have done that. I do need... Oh, so the apply as damage goes to that. Okay. There you go. Alright, he's got 26 total health, those archers. So that's not going to be doing a whole lot. Our wizard is definitely more on the utility end of things, which is great for this sort of combat-focused session we're doing here. Okay, but that's the wizard's turn. The fighter. Now, the fighter doesn't have that many options as far as, like, big attacks. He's got kind of reactionary stuff. Because he's got threatening, which is if they try and disengage. Comeback strike, which is if he misses. Counterattack, which is if they miss him. And that's only if the escalation dies even. Cleave, which is if I actually kill somebody. So I think, yeah, we're not we don't have too many options. So we're just going to be using our melee basic attack. And we will roll that. Okay, I rolled a critical failure. I rolled a 1. We're not going to do anything with that. But we will deal him the 1 damage. And then for... So we did get a odd miss. I don't know if surprising would let me drop down to a 0. Probably. I guess I would allow it. I won't do it yet, even though I should. When else am I going to do it this battle? Okay, we'll say fuck it. We'll use it. So you just click on that, which will tick down the use and just links it in chat for everyone to see. So, and then that allows us to use, let's say, Grim Intent. So then the next time we miss, we'll deal 1d8 damage on that. Not a very good turn for the warrior, the fighter. Okay, the rogue. So, we could use Flying Blade, because, Yeah, we could, but I think we probably... The rogue doesn't really want to attack somebody that the fighter isn't engaged with. But at the same time, those archers are just going to keep pelting the wizard. I don't know. I guess... Yeah, I don't know. We'll let the rogue do what he does best. So the rogue is just going to move up and probably use... I could use Evasive Strike. I guess that might be just like your standard option, because then you always pop free and you don't end your turn engaged with any enemy. And if you compare it to just your melee attack, it is... Yeah, it's the exact same as your regular attack. It just lets you pop free. So you never really want to do your melee attack if you can help it. Sure. Let's do Evasive Strike. Okay. He rolled a 16 versus AC. The Warriors have 15 AC, so it's 5 damage. And 5 damage from improved sneak attack, which it threw in there as well. Very kind of them. So we will apply that as damage, and that as damage. Brings him down to 10 health. He's staggered now. And I can then pop free, so I'm no longer engaged. Good. That's all good. Okay, now the other archer gets to go. I'm probably also going to shoot the wizard, because that's just prudent. So we'll just do that. Roll your short bow. 9 versus AC is definitely a miss. Scrub. The other warrior then is going to go. So roll your spear attack. Okay, that is a miss. So let's check his counter attack. Oh, I could have done comeback strike as well. Okay, so that's only when the escalation die is even. Unfortunately. Okay. I keep mentioning that. We'll get to that. Don't worry, we'll get to that. Okay, that was it. The Holy Cleric. Yes, we're gonna spear somebody. Or I could... No, I can heal and spear somebody. Let us not forget. Okay, so we're gonna definitely use heal on the wizard. And he's going to use his recovery. He gets +2 to the heal. He used a recovery. He healed for 7. He's back to full. It's all good. And then we're going to use Javelin of Faith against one of these archers. I think this is the damaged one. Roll them bones. Okay, 8 versus physical defense is sadly a miss. So it only does 1 damage to that archer. Okay, not too hot of a turn, that's for sure. Round 2. And now you can see the escalation die has moved to 1. So we can talk about that. The escalation die is in every combat. And as long as the combat is escalating, which basically just means as long as the combat is ongoing. Like, if you start a combat, and then you just, like, hide behind a wall across a chasm or something like that, and you just, like, sit there for 6 turns, the escalation die is not going to increase. But that's just in there, you know, to discourage that sort of behavior and gaming the system a little bit. But as long as the combat is ongoing, which is going to be 99% of the time, the escalation die will keep ticking forward. So in the first round, it starts at 0. Then now it's at 1. Next round, it'll be at 2, 3, 4, 5, and then finally 6 is where it caps out. And the benefit of it is that all of the player characters get to add the escalation die to their attack rolls, meaning that they are much more likely to succeed and hit as the combat goes on, which is awesome because players love to hit shit. No one likes to miss. So that's really excellent. And so what that means is that during the first couple rounds of combat, you're actually kind of less likely to hit stuff than, like, you know, kind of equivalent fantasy D20 games, because all the AC numbers have been bumped up a little bit. This archer has a 16 AC, for example, whereas in, like, Shadows of Adventure, he have, like, a 12, maybe. But, as the rounds tick on, you become more likely to hit. And, you know, 6 rounds in, 7 rounds in, I mean, you're just slashing and tearing. And then, you know, there's a lot of other effects, as we've seen, based on the escalation die and its number, like on even escalation die numbers. So not every round, but every other round, kind of. Things like that. And, you know, a lot of those abilities, you know, you can't use when the escalation die is 0. So you kind of have to get a little bit into the fight before you can use some cool abilities and stuff. It's a really interesting mechanic. Certain monsters can use the escalation die themselves, like dragons, and that makes them quite terrifying. And then there are a bunch of effects on the enemy side that are based on the escalation die number, and they can get benefits or things like that based on it. Okay, so back to the archer, shooting the wizard. They're just going to keep pelting this guy as much as they can. They roll 23. That's 6 damage. Okay, pretty simple. The staggered warrior is going to target that. The fighter. Roll. So that is definitely a hit. 5 damage to the fighter. The explorer wizard, again, pretty much just using magic missile. Not very exciting, but easy 5 damage. No problem. The fighter. So, again, I mean, positioning is not that important. So, even though, you know, we're using a grid and it doesn't really look like the warrior could move around and, like, try and engage the archers too well, like, that doesn't really matter. All that matters is that he is engaged, and if he wanted to go over and try and engage the archers, you know, he'd either have to disengage with with a roll, or he would have to just move and take the opportunity attack. And I don't know. So if an enemy moves past you and you are unengaged, you can intercept them and thus engage them. But I feel like, yeah, so you can always simply move away from foes and engage you, but you draw an opportunity attack from each of those enemies when you do. So otherwise you have to disengage first. If it succeeds, you can move without drawing opportunity attacks from the foes you were engaged with. Use your move normally. So, I guess the question I have is, one, if I disengage from enemies and then try and move past them, can they just intercept me again and thus engage me? I mean, what does my disengage really earn me other than moving without the opportunity attack? So that's where I'm a little fuzzy. I mean, even ignoring... And I guess kind of if you think of it narratively, like, you know, I'm fighting with this guy. I got him sword on sword, and there's an archer 10 feet behind him, kind of using him as somewhat of cover. If I disengage from him, in the sense of like kind of cautiously backing off and you know, getting further and further away from him, and then I'm like, oh, I'm going to go after that archer. Like, of course he's going to come after me and intercept me and block me from getting to the archer again. Like, unless I disengage away from him towards the archer, but, you know, he's not going to allow that. You know, just, again, speaking narratively. So I think in that case, he probably... So it is kind of tricky, I guess, to get at ranged attackers that are in the back if you have melee dudes that are capable of intercepting you. I think I'm probably gonna have to read a bit more about this to try and decide, or try and figure out how other people are doing things. But I was just thinking of, like, if I wanted my fighter to suddenly try and engage all 4 of these, can he even do that? You know? Even if I didn't care about opportunity attacks, can I engage multiple targets at once? Are they... hold on. Okay. So, this is from the SRD online. This is what it says. Actually, this is probably also here. Okay, it's phrased a little different. In a battle, each combatant is either engaged, locked in combat with one or more enemies, or unengaged, free. When 2 allies are engaged with the same enemy, they are considered next to each other. So, again, it's a binary thing. You're either engaged or you're not engaged. So, this guy is engaged with the fighter. This guy is engaged with the fighter. This guy, the fighter, is engaged. And yes, he's engaged to multiple enemies, but that doesn't mean anything. He's just engaged. I didn't really get an answer on whether you could then intercept after disengaging. But it doesn't seem like there's any rules for how many you can be engaged with at once. Because obviously you could be surrounded by 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 of any. I mean, again, the system's not designed for a grid. It's not designed for squares. In a square-based system, you could be surrounded by 9 targets, all that could hit you in melee, but it's not meant for that. So it's more just like almost narrative. I guess it is kind of narrative. It's like how many enemies could really surround and hit one target. It's almost a moot point. But then it's like, okay, so my fighter, let's say my fighter was here. And I am specifically kind of wanting to fuck up this archer right here. Like, obviously he's engaged with the fighter. Or with the archer. Is he also engaged with the other archer next to him? I don't know. That's really kind of murky, to be honest. Does my presence there really inhibit that other archer that much? I guess. Like, I am kind of... I guess, like, I'm threatening those archers and these warriors. I'm kind of threatening all 4 of them if I was in that position. So again, ignoring the squares, like right now, position-wise, the 2 skeletal warriors are very much in between me and the archers. and I can't get to the archers unless I make some sort of maneuver. So I think if my fighter did want to go here, risking 2 opportunity attacks, I think that would be okay. Again, narratively, I'm just like barreling through the 2 warriors to get to the archers. Yes, I am risking pain and harm and death, but they can't really stop me from doing it unless I die, you know? But then if you think of it mechanically, and I disengage, and then I try and move and they intercept me, intercepting blocks your movement. You stop. You stop them from attempting to rush past you to attack someone else. You know? So, I don't know. Generally, if you're behind an unengaged ally and an enemy moves past that ally to get to you, your ally has the option to move and intercept. Generally. I don't know. I don't know why this is so, like... I appreciate the idea of the combat being somewhat non-specific, somewhat narrative-based, somewhat loose, but there are certain things that you could just clarify. For someone new to the system and new to this whole concept, coming from very grid-based, rule-based, tactical-based system, I feel like you could be a little clearer. Okay, so the GM rules on what counts as moving past a defending character or enemy. In general, the more tactical the battle, the easier it is to intercept someone. GM should usually rule in favor of interception. I just need answers. Someone tell me. Okay, here we go. Some from the subreddit. Boss on the map with a Mook between him and a PC. Mook and PC are engaged. PC disengages from Mook and wants to close to engage with the boss. Mook's still in between and thus can intercept again, right? I don't see any reason the Mook couldn't intercept again, and that's the whole point of intercept rules. Player thought that the disengage could have included circling around so the Mook wasn't in the way. The top comment is, that interpretation really clashes with the spirit of... Oh, the GM's interpretation really clashes with the spirit of 13th Age's movement rules. The player's version is what I would do. Another comment, I think circling around or otherwise evading the Mook would be covered under the disengage attempt. Though a different enemy in between the Mook and the boss would be free to intercept a character as normal. There's nothing in the rules that's written preventing you from doing that. It's just a dick move by the DM. Okay. The PC is 100% right. Okay. Okay, good. All right. I'm happy with that. Well, because it works with what I want to try. Okay, so we're counting the disengage as you kind of moving around the enemies that you're engaged with so that you could get past them without them intercepting. I think that could be mentioned in the rulebook. I feel like that can't be that ridiculous of a thing that it's never come up otherwise. So the fighter here is going to attempt a disengage check, which is literally just a 50-50 chance. Okay, I failed. Now what that means, I don't get opportunity attack or anything like that. It just means that my movement action is canceled, because the disengage was basically part of my movement. So I stay where I am, but I still have my standard action. Okay, so that's fine. We're gonna target this wounded bastard. We're gonna do our melee attack. Roll that. I crit. I done crit, natural 20. So we're actually gonna double this damage, 20 damage. Double damage. He is now dead. Excellent. So then we can use cleave once per battle. It's a free action. Make a melee attack after killing someone. I do not have my move action available, so that's pointless. But we can now make another melee attack against this guy. So we can actually mention that. So that ticks down. That's done. Alright, I rolled 2 crits in a row! Holy shit! Foundry's dice roller is so much better than that other system I've been using. Damn! Okay. Holy shit. So that's 22 damage on this other guy. Also killing him. Dude, the fighter just went ham! Those archers are shitting themselves. Okay. I can't really do anything else, but that was good enough. Excellent. Okay, the rogue. So the rogue is not going to be able to sneak attack anything. Because... the fighter is not engaged with anybody at the moment. So there's not much he can do. Did we hit when we used evasive strike? We did, yes. So I did gain momentum. There's not really a good way to track momentum on here. Unless maybe, I guess an effect is what you would use. Oh, no. Pfft, momentum right there. Aha! Oh, we also have the cruel thing, because we're a dark elf. So if we get a natural even hit with an attack roll, we deal 5 ongoing damage to the target. Okay. Probably just do evasive strike and pop free. Although, I don't think we want to pop free in this case. Against an archer? They do have a melee attack, but it is weaker. And, an engaged target, if they use range attacks, it draws opportunity attacks. Oh no, that's only if they don't target the person engaged with them. So if he shoots the rogue in the face, that, I mean, it's nothing abnormal. There's no opportunity attack there. Let's just use shortcut then. Let's say fuck it. Okay, so the rogue's gonna move up. He's gonna target this guy. He's gonna use shortcut. We don't get any sneak attack damage, even though it will... Oh no, we do get sneak attack damage if it misses. Which it did! So, deal your sneak attack damage +1. And we rolled 6. So we're going to apply that as damage and that as damage. So he is now staggered. And I don't think there's anything special that we can do. So that's our rogue. He's now engaged. The other archer. So we're not counting these two as engaged. Okay. Those are not. Although, again, it's kind of... I think that's why using... I don't know, actually. because I was going to say that the fighter was going to engage both of them, but now I'm saying that the rogue doesn't engage both of them. So I don't know. But I guess we're going with they're not engaged. Because it mentions here that grognards call it basing your foe because your miniature's base contacts theirs. I think in this case, if I actually had this set up, these bases diagonally would not be touching. So, I don't know if that's the system we want to base it on. But whatever, we'll go with that. So this archer, either way, he's going to shoot probably the wizard still. I mean, it's not looking good for them, let's be honest. But he is going to target the wizard, shoot a short bow, and miss. Yeah, 13 AC, that is a miss. Womp womp. Okay, and then the cleric is, of course, going to shoot his shot. I don't think anybody really needs heals. So we're just going to use... Although there isn't much reason... we're all going to quick rest anyways, so whatever. Just use Javelin of Fate. Roll them bones. Crit! Oof! 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 And they're vulnerable to Holy, which I believe is... double... Oh no, crit range expanded. Oh, okay, that's it. I rolled a 20, so it doesn't really matter. I guess that's what it means. Yeah, I think that's what it means. If you use holy damage, your crit range is expanded. Okay. Well, it's crit, so it's 14 holy damage, or yeah, 14 holy damage. And that's that. Dead. Wow, we got 3 crits that round. Nuts. The wizard, of course, is going to use magic missile for a grand total of 6 damage. Hey, it's something. The fighter is, of course, going to move up. Target with this nice basic melee. 15 versus AC is actually a miss. I rolled a 9 plus 3 plus 2 from the escalation die plus 1 from my level. So 15. So that is 1 damage, but I still had Grim Intent. I still had that active. Oh, but that's only on a natural even miss. And I think I already used surprising. Damn. Okay. No. Natural even miss was to trigger Grim Intent. So that effect doesn't matter. So whenever you miss. Okay, good. No, we're good. So now we just need to roll a D8. Which I guess I would just roll a D8. 5, so 6 damage. And we will just... we'll just track that way. 14. I think I also could have just done it there. So that's that. But then I can also do brace for it. If I take a crit, it becomes a normal hit instead. The assassin rogue now can definitely use evasive strike for some good sneak attack. Rolled a 25. Pretty nice. 14 damage there. No, damn it. Stop that. This thing takes 14 damage. Stop it. Just want to deal damage. Okay, he's dead. Alright, dead. Ha! We're victorious! Okay, and that was our first combat with 13th Age. Unfortunately, I don't have much time left. We didn't really get that far in Tomb of the Serpent King at all. I'll probably continue this, though. We'll maybe do another video. Because now we kind of got into it. Okay. So, we finished a battle. We are allowed a quick rest. One quick rest between battles. So if I click that, you'll regain any of your per battle powers. You'll roll to recharge spent recharge powers. And you'll roll recoveries to heal above 50% health. So basically, you don't have to spend a recovery to heal during a quick rest unless you are staggered, unless you're below 50% of your health. Then you have to spend a recovery, if you can. So if I click this, it's not going to automatically use the recovery. But we restored Surprising, because that's per battle, and we restored Cleave, because that's per battle. So I'm not going to bother spending the recovery, because we have a lot of healing. But... So yeah, your per battle, your encounter abilities, whatever, they do not refresh automatically at the end of a battle. You have to be able to quick rest. And I don't know if it specifically says how much time it takes. Time spent on a quick rest isn't so much a true rest stop as it is clearing your head and catching your balance after a fight. Unless the GM is being a stick, you can always get a quick rest between battles. Oh, and when you take a quick rest, you can use as many recoveries as you want. You might have access to healing potions or spells that will give you more healing per recovery, or maybe you'll be stuck with the flat rolls. Okay. So yes, it's just assumed then that you're going to quick rest. Unless there's some like really dire thing, like you're... I don't know, some sort of just non-stop gauntlet or something like that, then maybe you wouldn't get a quick rest, but the rogue didn't really need it. I don't know if the wizard... but the wizard will probably use it. So he's just gonna do it a normal... Okay. He did not heal much. And then the cleric also doesn't need any heals, but will get heal back. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I guess we'll end it off here for now. I do want to continue this, though. It's... Well, I mean, it's not a perfect test of 13th Age, right? Because we're, one, we're using a square-based grid and then kind of ignoring the grid or trying to, so that's not great. But also we're doing just very combat-focused, like a dungeon crawl, especially a dungeon crawl that's pre-written, you know? So it's all kind of fuzzy. I do want to test 13th Age a little bit more in a more open-ended use case and get more into the narrative side of things and the background abilities and utility spells, stuff like that a little bit more. It does definitely remind me a lot of 4th edition D&D in a good way. I mean, that combat was not particularly fast, but a lot of that is due to getting used to Foundry, getting used to 13th Age, juggling 4 characters myself, 4 enemies, that sort of thing. But, like, it's not complicated. There was nothing really complicated there. And there was really some fun mechanics there, I think, with the classes. And from what I understand, like, a lot of the base core rulebook classes are quite boring. And they actually put out supplements later on that added a lot more fun options added new classes, stuff like that, to make it way more interesting. And a lot of people think that, like, those supplements, like 13 True Ways, should have just kind of been incorporated into, like, a new version of the core rulebook. And we have 2nd edition 13th Age coming out, which is supposed to fix quite a few things, improve a lot of things, take a lot of things that they learned as they went on. So that's pretty good. So yeah. As for Foundry, I mean, overall, like I said, I think it's really cool. Because honestly, like, at this point, 3 hours in, 2.5 hours in, I don't remember what the full map looks like now. So I don't actually know what the next room down there looks like. And that's kind of how it would be to be a player, just slowly moving through this dungeon. I think that's awesome. I think that's really awesome. And I can definitely see, like, playing with my family or something and having a screen out there that they could kind of, like, just watch and follow as they go through a dungeon. And especially for less sort of imaginative players that kind of struggle to visualize stuff, I think that's huge. I think that's really huge. Being able to just see this room. This is what the room looks like. Look, there are those coffins. There's the door. You know, there's some, like, piles of rubble. There's some barrels. You know, if you get some good battle maps and stuff like that, and there are just, you know, thousands and thousands of battle maps out there made by some really skilled people. That does wonders, I think, for just helping you visualize the scene and make everything more evocative. So that is honestly a big point in 13th Age's favor. Not just 13th Age, I mean D&D 5th edition, Pathfinder 2nd edition, a bunch of other RPGs, Shadow of the Demon Lord, that I could actually use those systems in Foundry completely. That is pretty great. So I don't know. More testing will have to be done and all that. Good stuff, though. I mean, that was a fun little battle. Like that. All right. My name is Mang. This has been Solo Roll Manging with 13th Age and Tomb of the Serpent Kings. I'll see you fine folks in the next part.